When people ask what do you do, answer them whatever it takes. Welcome to IS Point for the Hindu editorial analysis. You can hit the like button, subscribe my channel and also give your opinion about the video. So coming to the article, think beyond loan waivers. See, before going into the article, I request you guys to pause for a minute and bring down all the points with respect to the Indian agriculture and the loan waivers. See, this is a generalized topic where everyone has knowledge about something. So I want you guys to please bring out all your points with respect to the loan waivers and Indian agriculture. And I want you to structure it down. Fine. And then come to the article, because this article is in itself is an answer writing where it has structured and given everything with respect to the Indian agriculture and loan waivers. So coming to the article now, farm loan may be a crop loan or it may be an investment loan which is taken to buy equipments or machineries. Fine. So this is the definition of the farm loan. And this article tries to bring in the characteristics of the Indian agriculture. It says that one of the characteristics of Indian agriculture is low productivity and low scale. See, agriculture productivity means it is crop grown per unit area. Fine. So agriculture productivity is the crop grown per unit area. I can give you an example. For instance, a person has 1 acre of land and a person has 5 acre of land. Fine, a 5 acre of land may produce 20 units of crops, but a person in 1 acre of land may produce 7 units of crops. So the crop productivity is more in 1 acre of land. Fine. So this is called as crop productivity, which is very low in Indian agriculture. And one of the characteristics of Indian agriculture is the crop net sown area, that is the crop which is grown in the agriculture land is more, but the productivity is less. Fine. And this article also tries to say is it is the fragmented land holding which is also an important characteristics in Indian agriculture. See, fragmented land holding means it is not consolidated land. For instance, this article tries to give in few facts that the average land holding in India is less than 1 acre. Fine. So this is the fragmented land. See, if people have more land, that is they have more land for agriculture produce, then they will produce more. Fine. But people have less land in themselves and fragmented land holding for varieties of reason. So their agriculture enhancement becomes difficulty. Fine. And one of the characteristics is also subsistence agriculture. Subsistence agriculture means where the farm produce is for the family needs. Fine. That is, Indian agriculture is a substantive form of agriculture, means the production from the agriculture field it's only for the family needs. Fine. And the next stage of subsistence agriculture is intensive subsistence. See, intensive subsistence means you bring in modernization, you bring in equipments and you bring in machinery so that the agriculture production is increased, where the farm produce is met for the family needs, plus one can go for commercialization of crops. But subsistence farming means it is for the own produce. Fine. So this is the scenario with respect to the Indian agriculture. And another characteristics of Indian agriculture is no access to irrigation. It is climate dependent and there is a high prone to market risk because of the middlemen. And even the prices for the crops is not remunerative because of demand and supply, and there is an incidence of hoarding. Hoarding means black marketing and piling up of stock by the middlemen so that they could sell the crops when the prices increase. So this is called as hoarding, and the role of middlemen brings in and worrisome factor for the farmers. Then this article also tries to say that the non-farm income in Indian agriculture constitute nearly about 40% of the Indian agriculture. Fine. But this is skewed. That is, this non-farm income is not equally distributed. Rather, it is concentrated to a particular sect of society. Fine. So this is the characteristics of the Indian agriculture which the article tries to bring in. Then this article also says that for the modernization of agriculture, one requires investment. For the investment, one requires capital. But this capital is not available to the farmers because the crops in India are non-remunerative. That is, they are not income generative. Plus, other rising expenses in today's inflationary world makes a burdening factor for the farmers. So what they do is they go for loan. Fine. So they go for loan in order to modernize their agriculture. And this article also tries to bring in few facts. It says that the loan disbursement has risen, that is the farm loans which is given to the farmers have risen at a whole, but it tries to bring in a fact that the short term loan exceeds the input cost. That is, see, if you take India as a whole, and if you take the input cost for the agriculture in India as a whole, and if you compare this with the loan, it says that the loan given exceeds the input cost of the Indian agriculture. Fine. So this depicts that this loan is used for other purposes rather than modernizing agriculture or investing in agriculture. Fine. So this is one fact which the article tries to bring in. And this article also tries to bring that the loans which is given to the farmers is more from the non-institutional sources rather than institutional sources. I can give you an example now. See, for instance, institutional sources means loans from banks or any NBFCs. Fine, where the RBI can have a control on. But non-institutional sources are money lenders or any Seths or Chettiars from Tamil Nadu. So these are non-institutional sources. Fine. So the non-institutional sources are very much more than the institutional sources. That is, they have given more loans to the agriculture farmers. So this article also tries to say is the demand which is created from the agricultural economy is then debt-ridden demand. See, this is an important term which can be used in your answer writing. And see, this debt-ridden demand means where the demand of the product or the demand for the agriculture is met by debt. I can give you an example. See, the basic objective of MG Narega is to revive demand. See, what MG Narega does, it gives 150 rupees to anyone who works for one day, so that it creates a demand. So what the article tries to say is, when you come to Indian agriculture, then the farmers go for expenditure by taking debt. Fine. So this is what the debt-ridden demand means. So this is the scenario which is present with respect to the Indian agriculture. So as the article tries to say is, as a response to this present scenario, what the state does is, they write off the loans. They go for loan waivers. Fine. Where they reduce the loan. And recent incident could be seen. For instance, there has been a protest from the Tamil Nadu farmers in New Delhi for loan waiving, and even in the state of UP, Uttar Pradesh, farm waiving has been done. So this is also spreading in many states. So the objective of loan waiving should be, it should lessen the debt burden so that the farmers can go for fresh loans from the institutional buyers. Fine. So this is what the objective of the loan waiving should be. But what the article tries to say is, the present scenario is different. The reality is different, because it says that the success rate depends upon the needy farmers, and to target the needy farmers, one has to go for the survey. And it also tries to say that the non-institutional sources of loans are more than the institutional sources of loan, as I told you before. So these non-institutional sources does not come under the purview of waiving loan. Fine. It is the government who will be waiving loan, but the money lenders will not do that. Fine. So the vulnerable farmers going to the money lenders will not be covered in this loan waiving. Fine. And it also tries to say that this is only partial relief, because the loan which they get is for non-farm purposes. See, I have explained you before itself, where I told you that the total agricultural input cost of India is less than the loan given to the agriculture. Fine. I have told you the point before. So this loan waiving is only partial, because the money which will be given to the farmers will not be utilized in agriculture, rather they would be used to give their debts. Fine. So this article also tries to say is, there is an multiple loans which is available with the farmer's family. For instance, it says that there are many incidents of farmer's family where every member of the family gets a loan. So they will get more advantage from it, and one needs to have a proper survey in order to check this. And it also tries to say is, this loan waiving excludes agriculture laborers. See, it is the agricultural labor who work for daily wages. They do not go for loans. Fine. So this loan waiving does not bring them up. Rather, it would help the farmers instead. Fine. And it also tries to say is, these sort of things erodes credit culture. It decreases the credibility of the banks. Fine. And it also tries to say is it is more prone to error. For example, it's tried to say that the beneficiary selected would be very much difficult. I can also give you an example. See, for instance, few gold loans which are kept in banks are agricultural loans. Fine. And it is not kept by the farmers. But this loan waiving may also apply to the gold loan. Fine. So this can be used as an example. So it is an error with respect to the loan waiving. And it also tries to say is it has more implication on the government budget. That is, it says that the capital expenditure will increase. Fine. See guys, I just want you to make a note on the capital expenditure as well as the revenue expenditure. And it also tries to say that it has only short-term gains. That is, these gains are short-term in nature and it can bring out of the vicious cycles of debtness. But it is not a long-term. For the long-term, this article tries to say few solutions. It says that it provides immediate relief. For the immediate relief, one has to identify the vulnerable members. And for the long term, they need to increase the farm income. That is the income of the agricultural laborers. And it also should income the non-agricultural sources to increase the productivity. That is, the agriculture productivity should increase and non-agricultural sources, for instance, mixed farming, poultry farming, fishery, these sectors should be enhanced. And it also tries to say that there is a need for public spending, that is targeted public spending. See, this loan waiving is also public spending, but it has many shortcomings. What the article tries to say is the public spending should be through increase the infrastructure rather than loan waiving. Fine. And it also tries to say is one has to implement the MSP correctly, that is the minimum support price, and the agriculture reforms can also be attained if one implement the long pending reforms which are reviewed by many commissions. So that's it with respect to the article, guys. So coming to the article now, the big squeeze on civil society. So before going into this article, we'll just look at the background first, because these sorts of questions are very general in nature and you should know the background to write an appropriate answer. So the civil society happens to be a group or an organization. It may be an institution which is working for the interest of the citizens. But the main point here is it operates outside the government. Fine. So they operate for the welfare of the society. It may be an NGO, it may be an institution. And the point to be noted here is they work for very little profit or even sometimes free. Fine. So this is the definition of a civil society. And guys, I would also like to make one more point here. Please make sure that you know the difference between the civil society and a pressure group. There is a thin difference between the two, and I would like you to know that and write down in the comment box. Fine. So there are many functions of the civil society. It acts as an watchdog, it acts as an advocator, it acts as an agitator, it acts as an educator, service provider and mobilizer. See, the only thing which you need to know is it is not a government organization. For instance, I can give you an example. See, as a watchdog, it acts as against the violation of human rights and governing deficiencies. So one could see here that the National Human Rights Commission acts as a watchdog against the violation of human rights. But this National Human Rights Commission is not a civil society. It is a government organization. Fine. So it is not a civil society. And I can also give you an example. For instance, fifth pillar. Fifth pillar happens to be an NGO which is working against the corruption. So it happens to be a civil society. I hope the concept is clear. Fine. So we'll move on to the article now. And guys, one more thing. Please make sure that you use appropriate words when these sort of questions comes into play, because these questions are very general in nature and everyone will write these sort of questions, but the usage of appropriate words can fetch you more marks. So you make sure that you use these sorts of words in your answer writing. Fine. We'll move on to the article now. So coming to the article now, see, this article tries to bring in the concerns of the civil society. It says that now the funds are frozen for them, and the commission reports on the NGOs are in the poor form and the projects are shut down. So there is an element of state force and intimidation against the civil society, which is a worrying factor for them. So this article tries to say that everyone has the right to protest, and civil society in particular, but the opinion may vary from person to person. As the opinion varies, and the tagging them anti-national is inappropriate according to the article. For instance, it tries to bring in the issue of Kudamkulam and says that protesting against the nuclear power plant in Kudamkulam is, and tagging them anti-national is inappropriate. Fine. So this article also tries to brings in democracy. It says that civil society forms a base of democracy. It tries to correlate with the democracy, and then it tries to criticize the government. It tries to say that civil society forms the backbone of democracy, and it is not the election alone which represents democracy. Fine, there are many things other than election which represents democracy, and it tries to gives out in this point format. It says that even the work of the representative should be criticized. Even that is a form of democracy. And also tries to give a few points which I have mentioned here, so please have a go through, and says that even this is form of democracy. So what this article tries to say is, as the civil society forms the backbone of the democracy, so curbing the civil society means curbing the democracy. Fine. And even this article tries to brings in the history of civil society. It says that the focus of civil society was given during the year 1980s, and where many nations were shifted from trade unions or other form of unions to NGO. See, its origin can be traced back to the Stalinist states in Europe. See, Stalinist states happens to be an socialistic form of government or an communalistic form of government. It is a state which happens to be present in USSR. Fine. So this article states that it was initiated against communalism, because communalism happens to be a state where the government is a centralized form of government, where the government dictates according to the welfare of the people, and even the government to an extent dictates the liberty of the people. So it was a stringent government which used to be there. So this article tries to say that it was because of this Stalinistic states the civil society originated, which turned its back towards the centralized states, and it gained its popularity, and it formed the basis of the democracy. Fine. So while saying the origin of civil society with respect to the world scenario, it comes to the Indian scenario. It says that in India, the origin of civil society can be associated with political parties. It says that it was in the form of unions where the civil society originated, and these unions were aligned towards the political parties. See, I can give you example. For instance, the trade unions in India or any language developing organization originated during this phase in 1980s and 1990s, and it was a part of the political parties, where the civil society was looked as a step for the political approach. Fine. So this civil society was used as a political outcome rather than the basic rights of the citizen. So this article tries to say that even though it originated in such a manner, but over a period of year it got clarity, and many social activities came into play. For instance, EIL by the Supreme Court and RTI by the government gave an boost to this, and many social activists originated according to this lines. Fine. But now the article tries to say that it is in the deterioration phase. That is, it is in the waning stage because of the funds are seized and licenses are cancelled because of the present government. See guys, it is an outrageous statement against the government. You cannot use these sorts of outrageous statement in your answer writing, but I am just presenting my views in the article. Fine. So this article tries to say that it is in the deterioration phase because of the present government, and tries to criticize the government, and it also tries to say that in order to maintain the promise of democracy, civil society should be given a free hand. If not, the democracy could be only a state of election. That is, democracy could be only seen in the form of election and not in the form of criticism. Fine. See guys, I will also like to add my opinion over here. This article tries to criticize the government in an outrageous manner, but one could see that the funds and the license are cancelled for few NGOs. Yes, I do accept that, but it is with regard to the corruption which the NGOs are involved in. This article tries to say that the Greenpeace happens to be an organization where the funds have been seized for those organizations. But my belief is that the Foreign Contribution and Regulation Act, it is a welcome move by the government to curb the working of NGOs, because many NGOs is seen as an funding for the political parties. So it is a right step which is made by the government in order to curb this NGO. But yes, this article is right to an extent, but not in this outrageous manner. Things has to be looked even the opposite side, right? Fine. So that is with respect to this article. Thank you guys. Thank you for watching.